Hey, fourth grade, putting in some after hours work here in the kitchen tonight, but I'm going to be showing you how to use this tool to carve into this kind of rubbery material called safety cut. And what we're going to be doing is a type of art called printmaking. So let's get started. First thing we need to know about printmaking is this little guy is called a gouger or a gouge. And everybody's gouge has two different types of tips in the handle. Now these guys are kind of cool, but you have to know there's two sharp ends. Both of these ends right here are really sharp, but if you look at them, this one in my left hand is for cutting fine lines, and this chubbier guy in my right hand is for cutting thicker lines. Now these nice rounded ends right here, though, whoops, when it's not spinning around, these are the ends that actually go into the tool. And it's hard to see at first, and we'll look at it under the dot cam here in a minute. But if you see inside, you can kind of see that little black smiley face right there at the bottom. That's where this little doodad is going to go in. If you're too worried about putting this in there because of the sharp end, raise your hand and I'd be more than happy to do it for you. So once you get that guy sitting in there nice and tight, give it a twist right here to make sure that guy doesn't move anywhere. Just like when we cut with scissors or when you cut with any other material, never ever cut towards your hand. If you enjoyed having it attached to you when you came into the room, definitely cut away from it. I'm gonna put this stuff back in though, because we're not ready to use that quite yet. Right now, we've got to come up with a design to put on this thing. I spent some time during lunch the other day making this little piece of paper, and it tells you all you need to know. Use a pencil to draw everything out. You don't have to do two designs unless you want to. We're only going to print one of them anyway, but you've got an extra box here just in case you make a mistake in this box. But remember to use thick lines and avoid drawing really small stuff. Alright, I got two designs. This one I started first and kind of looks kind of crazy. I was thinking of old Japanese masks when I drew that. Didn't really like that one so much, so I switched over to this one and I ended up drawing kind of a spray paint can with a little bit of a cloud in the background. I think this is the one I'm going to go with, and right now I'm going to trace around all of this pencil stuff with a Sharpie marker. Now I know it feels like we use Sharpie marker a lot, but trust me, with this, that thick black line is actually going to make it a lot easier when I go to transfer it onto my safety cut. Alright, Sharpied. Now I've got a couple options. Option number one, I can redraw on this thing what I just drew here. So if you got a drawing right here and you're cool freehanding it on this, go for it. Just remember to use pencil at first, and then once again we'll have to Sharpie over that on your block. Or if you just absolutely love what you drew here, I'm going to show you a way to take this whole thing and transfer it exactly like you drew it here onto this. But in order to do that, I'm going to need some scissors to cut out the rectangle. Now, there really was a method to my madness here in using the Sharpie marker, because if I want to transfer this guy exactly, I flip it over and I can still see the lines through the back. And all I need now is a regular pencil, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover all of these lines with a nice thick dark layer of graphite, which is what we call the tip of that pencil. And we don't need to cover the whole thing as fast and furious as we can, but we do need to cover all those black lines that we can see through there. Once you think you've got them all covered with graphite, double check just to make sure you didn't miss anything, because when we go to transfer this, it's more or less going to be a one-time only deal. But anyway, here's what comes next. I gotta flip this guy back over, and now I'm gonna set it down on my block, and then I'm gonna have to once again, and I know, bear with me on this, I'm gonna have to retrace all those lines. For that, use a dull pencil. Otherwise, we're gonna rip through that paper. But when we do that, this part can go kind of quick. Just make sure that white paper doesn't move off your block, and make sure you don't forget any lines. It's really, really important to not press as hard as you can when you're doing this step. You don't want your pencil to dig into that rubber block that's sitting behind this piece of paper. So if everything went according to plan, we should be looking at kind of a nasty little transference that happened from the graphite on the back of this paper onto our rubber block. Now we're done with this guy, don't worry about that. But because this stuff is so prone to actually being wiped clean or smudging, now would be a good time to, for the last time, trace with that Sharpie marker. I promise after this step, we're done with that, we'll be able to get rid of the Sharpie marker, and then we'll start doing the fun stuff with the gouger. Alright, this bad boy is ready to gouge. Now here's what I gotta tell you before you start. Make sure you're happy with this, because once we start gouging, it's permanent, which means the pieces that come out of this can't be put back in. And we don't have enough of these for you to get a new one just because you messed something up here. So before you freak out if you have a mistake, raise your hand, let me know. Here we go with the gouging. I've got my biggest blade in right now, and that's going to help me move through these bigger, thicker areas a little bit quicker than this really small V-shaped blade. And what we're going to do is we're going to hold and we're going to gouge. Kind of like using a spoon in a bowl of cereal, but we're not going to jam it in as deep as we can go and then rip it. Actually, what we're going to do is just barely skim around the edge of all of our black lines. We don't have to go super deep. And in fact, if you look at that, it's not really that deep at all. If you go too deep, it's just extra work for you because it's not going to matter. What we need to do is just get a chunk of that safety cut out of the surface. Easy rule of thumb, since I was so mean and I made you use that Sharpie marker for the 850th time, but it's going to help you because you're going to gouge along both sides of that Sharpie. When you have areas like this that are close to your fingers, be very careful, and if you have to, turn your safety cut block to make sure you're gouging away from your fingers and your body. Now I'm going to speed this clip up a little bit, and all you have to do is watch the gouging in action, even though it's going a little bit faster than normal. Alright guys, I'm almost done, but as you can tell here, I have switched to that much thinner V-shaped tip to get some of the smaller details in here. Once again, make sure to cut and gouge away from your body. Something to know about printmaking, kind of like the one that I'm going to show you in class, the example block, but wherever you don't gouge out, this is going to hold ink when we go to actually roll this thing up and begin printing it on paper. So anywhere you've left lines and have not physically removed any of the block with your tool, that's going to hold ink and print. So you have some options as you work through this. The easiest way is what I just showed you, and to leave the black lines from the Sharpie so they pick up ink. But what I'm going to do inside here to get that logo to show up, because I want this label on the can to actually pick up ink, I'm actually going to gouge out the black lines. When you're done, or when it's time to clean up, here's how you need to fix this tool again. Before you throw any of this stuff away, make sure both blades go back in the handle and the handle gets closed. Then throw your scraps away. Otherwise, we stand a chance of having one of those blades get mixed up in this garbage and thrown out. Before you give your tool back to me, I want to hear that there's 2 attachments in the handle. Since we're going to be printing these next class period, it might be a great idea to write your name on the back. Leave these at your table. I will come around and collect these, making sure I get one from each kid. And next time I see you, we'll print this stuff, we'll roll it up with some ink, but check out these examples of prints first.